BibleWorm, reading the Bible with BibleWorm.
Welcome to BibleWorm, getting to the core of the biblical text. I'm Dr. Robert Williamson, professor of religious studies at Hendrix College and theologian in residence of Canvas Community in Little Rock, Arkansas.
And I'm Dr. Amy Robertson, Director of Lifelong Learning and Music at Congregation Or Hadash in Sandy Springs, Georgia. We're here every week to discuss the biblical text, both as biblical scholars and as people of faith, one Jewish, one Christian.
This week, we continue our summer series on creation care with Psalm 104, a profound text celebrating the magnificence of creation, which brings joy not only to the human heart, but also to all creatures, from the birds in the trees to Leviathan in the deeps of the sea. We even see the celebratory nature of God, who whisks about on the clouds, wearing a fabulous cloak made of light and rejoicing in all that God has created. The psalm also reminds us of the harmonious relationship God intends for humans and animals, with humans working during the day and animals prowling at night, so we can each live our lives fully without being a danger to one another. All of this, the psalmist reminds us, should make us sing throughout our lives at the incomparable glory of creation. Bless the Lord, O my soul. Thanks for joining us. Hey, Amy, it's time for BibleWorm.
It is time for BibleWorm. Bobby, I have an important report.
What is that?
Maybe we can tie it into creation care. There is a coyote in my backyard.
Like it just hangs out in your backyard? Or like it
A
comes
lot
in
of
and
the
out of your
time
backyard?
it does. I mean, it comes in
Whoa.
and out of the yard, I think. But he has been there. Well, I don't actually know the gender of this animal. The coyote has been there a lot. And so, like, we have dogs. Like, we have one little dog.
I was going to say, yeah.
So now we can't just let the dogs out because I'm afraid he'll eat the little dog.
Sure.
And then my spouse bought, did you know there's a thing called a coyote jacket?
No, it's like a little
It's
jacket
for-
you put on that coyote to make it
Whoa,
look better to its friends for like dinner dates and
that
things.
would actually be fantastic. No, you put it on the little dog and it's covered in spikes.
Oh, so that's funny. So do you have like your little dog looks like a punk rocker now? Is that what's happening?
Punk rat terrier. But I'm not letting this dog out. I'm not letting the dog out even in his punk rocker outfit.
No.
So I'm teaching him to use the toilet. No, I'm not doing that. I mean, we're taking him on walks, but.
I mean, I find this conversation a little bit ironic given that we're having a day today where we talk about all of God's lovely creatures. But my first thought was, shouldn't you call animal control?
I had the same conversation with myself in my mind. Like, I do not want this coyote here.
Right.
I also do not want to be responsible for the death of the coyote.
Yeah, you want the coyote to live a full and happy life someplace else. Such that your rat terrier does not have to wear a spiky jacket all the time.
Yeah. I don't know. So I heard you can order wolf pee online, and if you spray it around, then the coyote leaves.
I feel like, was there an Office episode or something? I feel like wolf urine has been in some sort of
the natural
show.
world that I'm even considering ordering wolf pee online?
Off of Amazon or whatever. Yeah.
Anyway,
That's amazing.
That's your introduction to creation care for today. There's a coyote in my backyard.
Yeah, when you're just abstractly on a podcast talking about loving creation, it's all easy. When your rat terrier has to wear a punk rocker jacket and you have to douse your lawn in wolf urine to ward off God's creatures, that's a whole different thing.
Yeah, I was in this like very nature-loving kind of service a while ago, maybe last summer, and the speaker was talking about all of God's creatures, and it was just like right on cue that I smacked a mosquito on my arm. And the guy sitting next to me looked at me and was like, except that one. I was like, sorry, man.
That's amazing.
You crossed a line.
My daughter and I have an ongoing conversation about God's love and care for mosquitoes and how whether they are wonderful creatures beloved of God or whether they are not. She also learned, I didn't know this, but that mosquitoes, it's only female mosquitoes that bite, and they do it in order to produce young mosquitoes.
Yes.
And so then she's like, well, that mosquito just wants to have babies, Dad.
I know. And then you can have more mosquitoes.
I know. And I'm
Be
like, that's
fruitful and
exactly what I don't
multiply.
want. Yeah.
No, I mean, it really,
God's
like,
command from
you know,
Genesis
we
1.
jest, but it really does like highlight the tension between the wonderful and idyllic conversations that we have while we're reading the text. And then it's like, oh, wait, but this creature makes my body uncomfortable in the following way.
Yes.
You know, I mean,
yeah.
Well,
we're off to a raucous start. Very hopeful and positive approach to the text. Today, we're actually reading one of my most favorite of the creation texts in the Hebrew Bible, and one of my most favorite of the Psalms as well, I think. Although BibleWorm might well ruin it for me. I don't know. We have a habit of ruining things. We don't ruin things. We complexify things.
This is a beautiful psalm.
It is a beautiful psalm. Maybe it is. Maybe we shall not ruin it. We're in Psalm 104. We're going to read the whole psalm today, and I don't know what else to say about that. Is there anything else you want to say about that? Today's theme in the Spirit and Truth series that we are sort of I was going to say co-collaborating, but I feel like that seems maybe redundant.
Co-collaborating.
We're collaborating with is care for the animals in the water and air. And then next week, they're going to talk about care for land animals and other people. So we're kind of playing with that in the way that we do. And so this text is going to sort of cover all of the animals today. And then next week, we're going to talk about the ethics of creation care, something like that from Leviticus 26.
Good stuff.
I don't know why I said Leviticus so aggressively, but I said Leviticus very aggressively.
Yeah, it's a very clear text.
It is.
I think I love this psalm too, Bobby. And I think the only other thing I might want to say just to start us off is I think it is tempting because many of us know the Genesis 1 account of creation so well to whenever we read other stories of creation, be like mapping it on, be like, oh, they're talking about this part, they're talking about this part, they're talking about this part.
Yep.
And there will be parts in here where you'll want to do that. And you know, there's nothing wrong with it, but just to the extent that we can as readers, let this psalm say what it says and connect where it connects and do other things where it does other things.
Yes. And
we can just try to make some space for all of that.
That sounds good. Hang on just a second while I cross out some of my questions that I wrote down
for
today.
Stop it.
Yeah, no, I struggle with this with my students. I teach a class in which creation is part of the class listings, and we read Genesis 1 and Psalm 104, and that's exactly the first move they want to make is that. And I totally agree with you. We can make those connections, but let's let them be themselves before we try to map them on one to the other. Yeah. Scholars actually do argue about whether Genesis 1 and Psalm 104 are cross-referenced in some way. And if so, which one is earlier and which one is reading the other? Like, it's a really kind of interesting conversation. But I agree with you that let's let Psalm 104 be itself.
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay, so Psalm 104, and I'm reading in the Common English Bible. I went back and forth about whether I wanted to read the CEB or the NRSV. The NRSV is more familiar to me and in some ways a little closer to my heart. But the CEB sometimes says things in a way that's exactly because they're not familiar to my heart. Yeah. I'm like, wait, what? And then I see new things. So I'm going to go with the CEB. You're reading the new JPS?
The NJPS.
All right. Let my whole being bless the Lord. Lord my God, how fantastic you are. You are clothed in glory and grandeur. You wear light like a robe. You open the skies like a curtain. You build your lofty house on the waters. You make the clouds your chariot, going around on the wings of the wind. You make the winds your messengers. You make fire and flame your ministers. You establish the earth on its foundations so that it will never ever fall. You covered it with the watery deep like a piece of clothing. The waters were higher than the mountains. But at your rebuke they ran away. They fled in fear at the sound of your thunder. They flowed over the mountains, streaming down the valleys to the place you established for them. You set a boundary they cannot cross, so they'll never again cover the earth.
Mm.
So I just want to linger for a second over the very beginning of this psalm, which is often translated, "Bless the Lord, O my soul."
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Here in the CEB, "Let my whole being bless the Lord." My question is just like, what does that evoke for you? Or what kind of mindset does that put you in for reading this text?
You're right. Like I just have it just it's almost like illogical. It's not a cerebral thing, but it feels so personal to me, almost like you're trying to like wake up your own soul
Yeah.
to do this work. And you know that this psalm will also end with that phrase, and the psalm before it had this phrase a bunch
Yes.
of times also. It sort of is a refrain, I guess, over this part of the Psalter. For this psalm in particular, I guess I'm thinking about creation and how we get our soul in the first place. And it's not, I can't do like a play on Hebrew words precisely. Like it's not sort of at that level, but I don't know. It makes me think of like the reflexive nature of prayer, and that it should really stir something in us. It's not just I'm going to say these words to satisfy God in some way. It's
Right.
really, I don't know, to start with a call to yourself. I love it.
Yeah, I love that the bless there is an imperative. And so the CEB, "Let my soul bless the Lord," is a little like it has made it a cohortative, which is still nice, but like, "Hey soul, hey my soul, bless the Lord." It's like you're talking to yourself is really, I really like that image of like sometimes we have to remind ourselves, our innermost being, to praise the Lord, and that's what's happening here.
Mm-hmm.
The idea of whole being, I like the word, nephesh, which is translated soul here and elsewhere in the Hebrew, in a pre sort of separation of the soul and body era, probably means like my whole essence, or with everything I've got, or something like that. So letting it mean that, but also letting it be a soul, and sort of thinking about what that does. So we get an image of God's like wardrobe here. Like,
yes, we do.
It's so interesting to me. It's like how fantastic you are, how fabulous you are, oh Lord. And then there's the clothing, and you're wearing light like a robe. I just think that image of God wearing a light robe is kind of cool. Do you want to say anything smarter than that?
It's super cool. I mean, what stood out to me was, God is so closely associated with glory and majesty in my mind. But I would have sort of said like God is like the embodiment of majesty, or God eminent. But to say that God is clothed in majesty, it's just an interesting shift of metaphor. Like if you imagine something as exalted as glory and majesty and light, and that God wears these things as an ornament, sort of, is sort of the ultimate exaltation of God, but also places God in this world of, I don't know, that's the world that God is in a place that's filled with, like, those are the resources that God has, instead of like, I have wool and I'm going to knit myself a jacket. Like, I have light.
Yeah.
And I have glory, and I have majesty, and I love it.
My daughter likes to be all fancy, which I love. Like, she just, like, the outfits that she puts together are just like, I think are amazing. And so I read this a little bit that way, is like God likes to be fancy, and this is the way that God can be fancy.
It is fancy.
It's just kind of, I just like that image.
Yeah.
So then we get this, I'm in 2B. You open the skies like a curtain. You build your lofty house as the CEB on the waters. So here we've got some kind of sense of a structure that God is building, some kind of a dwelling place. Can you talk about what you see going on there?
I don't know if this is, if this is intentional, if there's some sort of like play on Hebrew sounds, but that the word that's used for tent or tent cloth, it has a lot of the same letters as the firmament, just in a different order.
Yeah.
And so that I have always associated those things together, that somehow like the firmament is like this kind of tent over God, maybe because it also has a dome-like quality to it.
Yeah.
But that might be crazy. I don't know.
I really like that. So then in the Genesis 1 text, rakia is the dome. Mm-hmm. Here Uriah is the curtain. Is that
right? But it's ka Uriah. So it has the like a tent cloth. So it has.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, the same.
I don't know. This is something the rabbis probably would have pointed out.
Yeah,
but they're not the same word. They're not even exactly the same letters, but they have the same sounds.
I like that. And, I think of them as, I never really paid attention at that level. I think of them as sort of different here we are comparing Genesis 1 and Psalm 104, but that sense of a dome.
I started it, didn't I?
In Genesis 1. Feels very like solid, or like we talked about that being like a bowl of some kind, and at least in the most strict sense. Here it's a curtain, which to me just it feels a little more flowy, a little more movable. Yeah. That word Yariah is also, I think, sometimes used of a curtain, and maybe specifically of the curtain of the tabernacle.
Oh yeah, I guess it probably is. Yeah.
I mean, I don't know, like if you think of it, so my head went kind of curtain, tabernacle. Wait, are we building some kind of holy space? And then God is establishing a room that has a curtain. And did you go there, or if you went there, would you have, like, does that image lead you any place?
I mean, I hadn't gone there, but I like that very much. And the idea of, we have these sort of abstract conversations all the time about like what is God's dwelling place, and there have been different times that it has been seen differently over the course of Jewish and Christian history. But I love this idea that sort of the same way that you would enwrap a sacred space on earth in curtains just to sort of like demarcate it.
Yeah.
That in like the infinitude of the cosmos, there is a heavenly space that is somehow like a tent cloth, like a curtain.
So if you follow that line of thinking, does that make the earth, in a sense, a holy space that's being set out? Is that where that goes?
I don't know. I might have to hold the image in my head, because I don't know if, as we're reading more, because I don't know if the image sort of goes down past the heavens themselves also.
So it's you open the skies like a curtain and build your lofty house on the waters. And so I've sort of been thinking like the curtain is the opening to the house where God dwells, which is set on the waters, which means that the earth itself has become sort of God's holy place. So we talk sometimes about, there's a temple in Jerusalem, which is a place where God sort of is concentrated, or I don't know how, sometimes we talk about it that way. Here's maybe a sense that God is like the whole earth is God's holy dwelling place. And I don't know, I just like that way of conceiving of creation is really, I think, helpful to me.
No, I like that very much.
So verses 6 through 9, we start getting this conversation about waters again, the deep waters that are running away and having boundaries.
Yeah.
You have invited us not to try to compare that to Genesis, which I think is a good invitation.
Just be aware of when we're doing it. How about that?
So I'm curious, when you pull away from Genesis and say, I'm not going to think about that story, and you just read this image here in Psalm 104, what stands out to you about it?
What I see, or what I think is being described is, it's, at least in my translation, it describes the deep, the water, as a garment. So like God has this garment of light and the earth has this garment of water, but there's so much water that it goes up above the mountains. But the mountains seem to be there. They're just covered. But then there's like a sudden event like it's a shofar blast or thunder. Like there's a sound that frightens the water back, which I just think is like that sort of animation of the water sort of being startled at the magnitude of God's sound.
Yeah.
That feels, I know we're not comparing. I shouldn't have set us up that way, but that feels a little bit different to me.
And we've talked about water in various ways in all of our texts.
Yeah.
So we had that in Genesis 1, and then the Job 38 text, we had the sea, the little baby sea with its like little boundaries set for it. Last week we talked a lot about water in different ways. Here you have another version of that. What I really like your comparison there of the earth is clothed in water as God is clothed in light, because it is said it is covered in water like a piece of clothing. And I was just thinking like there's watery water there, right? But I like thinking of the earth as having like a little water suit on. Yeah. And so the water has that sort of positive sense of providing clothing for the earth. But it gets a little out of control there. It's a little high. And so it needs to be sort of put back in its place.
Yeah, I don't get the sense yet in these verses that there's a problem inherently with the water. It's just there's so much of it.
So in verse 7, the CEB reads, "At your rebuke, they ran away. The waters ran away." And so I think I'm hearing that word rebuke, ge'ara in the Hebrew, as like a scold. It reminds me a little bit of the way, like my dog likes to go out in the backyard, and there's another dog next door who's also in her backyard at sometimes, and they get on the fence and they bark at each other through the fence, and then I go out there and I bark at her like, "Ruth!" And then she goes, and she comes running back inside. And I'm not like mad at her. Like I don't think she's a terrible dog or whatever, but I'm just like, okay, you cannot be doing that. That's the way I think of this, is like there's a little, like God barks a little bit, and then the waters are like, "Oh, sorry," and they go running back in.
I love that. I don't know why my translation actually has it as they fled at your blast.
I don't know. Maybe it's used in places that way. I don't really know.
I don't see any references to it as well. In any case, maybe they're just drawing the connection because the next part has sort of like some kind of thundery sound.
We do get the sense in the ancient Near East, of course, as we've talked about, of the waters as sometimes being like monsters, like Tiamat in Babylon or Yam in Canaanite mythology. And they're kind of these little fierce creatures. So however you read the relationship of God and the water right here, first of all, the water is clothing, not a monster. Second of all, whatever God does, blasts or rebukes or barks, they go, like they know who's in charge, right? They're just like, "Oh, sorry. And so one thing that's being said here is that God is fully master over these waters. There's no cosmic battle that is being played out here.
Bobby, do you read verse 6 to say that it sort of says like, you made the deep cover the earth as a garment. Do you take that to mean God made the water, or God caused the water to cover? Like God seems to be involved in it before this moment of, whatever rebuke there was.
I guess I hadn't really thought about it quite that. Like, are we talking about God created water in order to cover the earth? I think maybe so. The image that's in my head, I'm thinking about my kids a lot today. I don't know quite what's going on. Summer Bobby.
Yeah, I love it.
But it's like when I put a shirt on my 2-year-old, and like there's a period of the putting on of the shirt where like his head's inside the shirt and his little arms are like, sprawled out, and then like I pull it down and it goes where it's supposed to go. Like I'm kind of reading it that way, as like God put the water shirt on the earth, and the earth was like, "What?" And then God's like, "Hey, shirt," and pulls it down, and then the earth appears.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
Make it all fit.
So the first step was just like getting that water on there, and then God sort of fit it all together there at the end.
Yeah, it does. I feel like from the get-go, it sets up you pointed out a moment ago that there's not really a sense of tension here where the water's not totally under God's control. and having God involved from the very beginning in whatever it has to say about the water seems to support that idea. It's not as much like an existing thing that has to be dealt with.
The last thing I want to say about this section is just, I think it's so cool. The image in verse 3, you make the clouds your chariot going around on the wings of the wind. Like, this is like God is like kind of windsurfing or something, like just like, woohoo!
Yeah, I mean, it seems like the whole sort of orientation toward God just seems sort of different here. Like, it's like, I feel like there's got to be some kind of reality TV show that would be a good comparison. But to imagine God like clothed in glory and light and riding around the winds like chariots, like you really get the sense that like this is God's playground. Creation is God's playground.
Like the divine version of the X Games or something.
Yeah, I mean, it's so lighthearted, and God is really delighting in
I like that.
So many aspects of creation.
This text is not so serious as some of our other texts.
Yeah, yes, it's not as serious. Hi, y'all. It's Amy, one of your friendly co-hosts, and I want to tell you why BibleWorm is important to me. There's a Jewish tradition that Torah study is best done with a partner, a havruta, we call it, someone who pushes you beyond where you would have gone on your own. Bobby was essentially my havruta for 10 years of grad school, and I've never found a thought partner quite like him. So when he asked if I wanted to read texts together, there was no real thought process before I said yes. The decision to record this podcast the way we do was risky. We don't have a script. We don't pre-talk things. We are thinking together live. And it is my hope that precisely because of that, you feel invited to think along with us. Because everyone needs a havruta. And if you don't have one, I hope you will let us be yours. If this way of being in relationship to biblical text speaks to you the way it speaks to me, I hope you'll help sustain us through Patreon at whatever level makes sense for you. There are some nice perks if you need them. Liturgies, videos, monthly discussion groups. This year I've added some recordings of the chanting of these texts that you might hear in a synagogue. Or you can just support us to show your appreciation and help us know that this work matters. Thanks for listening and for supporting us however you can.
So this next little section, we get more of a description. So far, we've just had the creation of the environment, I suppose. Mm-hmm. Verse 10, we start getting the creatures. You put gushing springs into dry riverbeds. They flow between the mountains, providing water for every wild animal. The wild donkeys quench their thirst. Overhead, the birds in the sky make their home, chirping loudly in the trees. From your lofty house, you water the mountains. The earth is filled full by the fruit of what you've done. You make grass grow for cattle. You make plants for human farming in order to get food from the ground, and wine which cheers people's hearts, along with oil which makes the face shine, and bread which sustains the human heart. The Lord's trees are well watered, the cedars of Lebanon which God planted, where the birds make their nests, where the stork has a home in the cypresses. The high mountains belong to the mountain goats. The ridges are the refuge of badgers. The BibleWorm Collaborative had a long conversation about badgers and whether we like them or not, which I thought was really kind of funny. Because the word there could be translated as rabbit.
Oh.
Or it could be translated as coney, which is like a little rodent-y creature that are kind of cute. And so they were like, oh, badgers, those guys are
We don't want badgers here.
Anyway, so this whole thing, sort of like last week's text, starts with water. And I just wanted to notice that. Did you want to say anything about that?
I mean, I think it just, it's the first thing that even when we're talking about sort of setting the scene, that's an important part of it. And then as this sort of unfolds, it just is so clear that the way that the water moves through the earth shapes so many other things. Like it nourishes, and we'll get to it, I think, as we read, but it nourishes the animals who come to it to drink, but also there is foliage alongside the water, and then the birds live in the foliage, and then like it seems like it's really the starting place for so much of what makes life possible.
That is exactly right. I mean, and that is also true scientifically as well. So the text is getting something that's both a deep spiritual truth and also just true.
Yeah.
The first thing that is said to benefit from the water are the wild animals. Mm-hmm. And then we get a reference to wild donkeys and then birds in the trees. Do you have a thought about starting with the wild donkeys and birds?
I think I just have sort of a sense of like the wildness of this scene. Like there's no human activity. No one has to manage anything that's happening here. There are these natural passageways of water that gush, and the animals out in the wild find them. They're there. The wild water is there for the wild animals, and nothing about it needs to be controlled if the system's working as it should work.
We've seen that kind of a lot in the text since Genesis 1, especially. Even in Genesis 1, too, that the creation it's doing its own thing without reference to human beings, at least in the first instance.
Yeah.
I think that here as well. I love that the birds here are not just birding in the trees, but they're like said to be singing or chirping.
I love that.
What did you do with that image?
I mean, again, it just sort of brings out for me this sense of delight in creation, like just things working exactly as they should work. Like, fine, the water keeps the birds alive.
Yeah.
That's good. But also, alive and with the energy and the spirit to be able to sing. And I don't know if I would like to assert that birds singing means they're happy, but I actually have no information about that. But you get the sense that there's a sense of well-being here. It's not just, you're not dead.
I absolutely agree with that. And there's a sense in this text that it's not just survival that's in mind here, but it's actually joy. And we begin by the psalmist reminding their soul to praise and sing, which is where we're going to end too. And here's birds in the trees just doing the same thing. Like maybe they wake up in the morning and remind their little bird souls to sing too. I don't know, but it seems like they just sing because that's just
it's the most natural thing in the world.
That's the way they're oriented.
Yeah.
From the birds, then we get grass for cattle. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And then we get plants for human farming. So we're starting to come into the realm of human life. Mm-hmm. You have thoughts about that sort of the entry there by way of cattle and farm plants?
I mean, I think the first thing that I just want to mention here is when it says you water the mountains from, in my translation, it says your lofts.
Oh yeah, from your lofty house here.
Yeah, from your what I'm imagining here is that now we're talking about rain, that it used to be torrents of water, like streams of water that a wild animal could go to where the water is. A bird can go to where the water is. But now we're talking about grass. And so there has to be another system. It can't just be streams. And so now there's rain that, again, supports. Now we're talking about cattle, not wild animals. But now the water seems to be supporting. It's like another step up the ladder, like the grass that's going to be eaten by the cattle. And this doesn't get to, the cattle may then be eaten.
Right.
The cows that may then be eaten by humans. But it's sort of, it builds up another level.
That observation about the lofty house, like that word that's being used there is the same word that was used back in verse 3, aliyah. like a high place, or CEB's got a lofty house.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's a sense in which God built God's habitation behind the curtain, from which God then makes it rain. And so you get the image of like creation as God's house, God's temple, in which rain is what issues forth. It's pre-minding me of Ezekiel 47, which we're going to get to in a couple of weeks.
Okay, we'll put a little pin in that.
Yeah, pin in that one. This, I like the movement of this. Like, we start with the wild animals and the wild donkeys, and then we've got birds, and then we've got domesticated creatures. You can feel human beings getting closer. So it's like started far from us and it's come toward us. It comes toward us with the kind of cattle, which are domesticated animals, which maybe we're going to eat, maybe we're going to milk, maybe we're going to make cheese. I don't know quite what we're supposed to do with the cattle here, but they're for human, at least in part, for human purposes. And then we get this reference to farming, which sounds a little bit like my dad is a agricultural engineer, and so we had a big old garden in our backyard. And I spent a lot of my childhood like picking weeds and things that were not my favorite things to do. And so like when I read like for human farming, I'm like, oh no, like I gotta go weed the garden. It sounds like work to me a little bit. But then you get this lovely, like, so in order to get food from the ground, that sounds very utilitarian in verse 14. Like, we gotta eat. But then verse 15, wine to cheer the heart, oil to make the face shine, bread to sustain the heart. That just, I just feel so rich to me. Do you have thoughts about those three?
Yeah, I mean, it is, again, like the sort of level of complexity, both in terms of the human's needs and, compared to the bird that just is singing because it has a tree by some water. Humans sometimes need more than that to feel that sense of gladness or security. And also in terms of like the complexity of what actually has to come out of the earth for all these different things to happen. Now it's not, so you can get food out of the earth and then wine. So you have a whole like fermentation process that has to happen within the created world. Oil and bread, like again, you're manipulating the things that are coming out of the earth. But it all is all that you need is provided for you, but it's like raising the level of complexity of all those things.
I really love that idea of complexity. And I'm really struck by this repeated emphasis in this text that the creation is about joy. And I think it's easy to lose that, especially in contemporary conversations about creation care tend to move quickly to the things that have gone awry, as they should. But there is this moment of which creation is here for us to make us joyful. And if we would tend it properly, and these are simple things, right? It's just a little bit of wine. So your face gets to be a little shiny with some oil. The bread is not just to get you through to tomorrow, but the bread is actually kind of to make your heart glad. And so there's a sense in which the created order as it was made is meant for human thriving, not human exploitation, right? Which is it comes out of Genesis 1 sometimes, but just for human joyfulness. Just like the birds are joyful, like those badgers or conies are joyful. Like it's like God is joyful riding around on God's wind chariot in the light robe. Like it's just such a
No, I love that so much. And I love that by elevating some of the fancier things that we get at this point in the psalm. Like, it's not just about meeting our most basic physical needs. It's about joy.
So the way that we got to humans in this text was water to wild animals to birds to domesticated animals to people. And then we not exactly, but we sort of make the reverse trek. We go back to well-watered trees and then birds and then mountain goats. So you end up with this kind of like The wildness brackets the sort of human thriving that's at the center. I just think it's a really lovely construction of this text. People are at the middle, but we're not the beginning or the end. Sort of, we're enveloped kind of poetically in the wild creation.
Yeah, I love that. And it's shifting a little bit in its focus from things we would ingest, one might ingest, to now how these creatures make homes in different spaces. And it just really has me thinking about the ways that, like, the innumerable and complex ways in which all of the different systems in creation interact with each other and intersect with each other in ways that I don't always see.
That observation about the wild creatures, all the creatures as having their place where they belong, having their homes, that's really lovely. And it leads us nicely into this next section of the text. So I'll pick up in verse 19. God made the moon for the seasons and the sun too, which knows when to set. You bring on the darkness and it is night, when every forest animal prowls. The young lions roar for their prey, seeking their food from God. When the sun rises, they gather together and lie down in their dens. Then people go off to their work, to do their work until the evening. Lord, you have done so many things. You made them all so wisely. The earth is full of your creations. And then there's the sea, wide and deep, with its countless creatures, living things both small and large. There go the ships on it, and Leviathan, which you made, plays in it. All your creations wait for you to give them their food on time. When you give it to them, they gather it up. When you open your hand, they are filled completely full. When you hide your face, they are terrified. When you take away their breath, they die and return to the dust. When you let loose your breath, they are created, and you make the surface of the ground brand new again. What was connecting to me from what you were saying about them having like physical places where the animals belong, in this section we get kind of temporal places where animals belong. With night and day. What did you see going on there?
It reminded me almost of some of our conversations about other creation texts where it was sort of like, it's not, God doesn't choose between the darkness and the light or the water and the sun. It's just sort of like there is space for both of these things. And sometimes, as we read before, they can all interact really easily. The birds can be in the trees that's next to the water where the wild creatures go, and like that's all fine. Some things should not interact that directly, like the coyote with my small dog, right? Like,
right, yeah.
We can affirm both of them, but they need to have their own place. And I love the way you just said that it's not just a physical place. It can be a time.
It reads almost like there's a night shift and a day shift.
It does, yeah.
Humans are out in the day, and we can be dangerous, as you well know, to other creatures too. And so when we're out in the day, they all go home and hide in their dens with their kids. And then we go home and hide in our houses with our kids. And then they come out and lion around. And everybody is safe and able to thrive. I really like that. It feels to me, you're right that in Genesis 1, say, there was a separation of night and day. In Genesis 1, I kind of got the sense that day was the one that was really the important one, and night was just like not day. This feels like it has more of a sense of like, no, night really has a value of its own. And the value is that it lets animals come out and thrive. And also it keeps humans from encountering animals that might be dangerous for them. And so the night has its own sort of clear value, not just being a not day. You also get this sense of the seasons and times again, and the sun knows the times. We should know the times. And you get the sense that we've named a couple times along the way in this series that if people knew our time and our place, that maybe creation might thrive more than if we don't remember our time and place.
Yeah.
We get a statement here of the clearest about the water creatures here. We get countless creatures, small and large, and Leviathan.
Mm.
Could you just talk to me about the sea creatures in this text?
Well, when we were reading, this creature's small and large, I was picturing like fish and dolphins and whales.
Right.
Leviathan is like this. What's that? Like the Loch Ness monster.
Yeah, that's exactly how I think of Leviathan.
He's like this sort of mythical sea monster, like actual monster that is seen here as a creation of God, as like a sparring buddy, as a toy, as a, like very scary to us, which you wouldn't even necessarily know from this psalm, but they're it's just so playful, Bobby.
Yeah.
It's just,
yeah.
Like, why not throw in a Leviathan to just, keep things interesting? And I also love that there are ships in here.
Say more about that.
I mean, I think it is really easy for me to fall into a binary of like, these things are natural and beloved by God, and these things are stupid and man-made.
Yeah.
But here, the glory of creation includes things that, that humans have made sort of in the context of this system, and we can celebrate. Like, there's room to celebrate those things too. There's just such a sense of like playfulness and abundance. Like, there go the ships. There goes Leviathan. Like, wow.
I like it. Look at all that stuff. Yeah.
Look at all that stuff.
And you get the sense that Leviathan's out there and the ships are out there and they're not scared of each other. Like, they're not threatening to each other. My teacher, Walter Brueggemann, used to talk about Leviathan there as God's rubber ducky. I don't know if that was his phrase or if that he got that from someplace else, but the sense of like Leviathan, this big fierce creature, in other texts here is like, like a little plaything that God plays with, or is just splashing around. Anywho.
I love it.
So, Amy, this image that begins in verse 27, it starts out so lovely.
Yeah.
All of creation is waiting for God to give them their food. It's like God is like the heavenly zookeeper who's just like going around and like got a little pouch of food and handing it out to everybody. And they're like, I sort of have an image of like little baby birds waiting for their mom to drop some food in their mouth.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Such a lovely idea. Then the second half, beginning in verse 25, you hide your face and they are terrified. You take away their breath. They die and return to the dust. The BibleWorm Collaborative really had a very strongly, at least some of them, negative reaction to that little verse. Like, we've had this wonderful creation where everything is thriving, and then suddenly God hides God's face and things start to die. Can you talk to me about that? Like, is that a disturbing image to you, or do you see redeeming things there? How should we read that, do you think?
I think for me, what it really elevates in this understanding of creation, which is maybe different than some other descriptions of creation, is that like everything is so intimately connected to God. Like it's not just God got it started.
Right.
And everything in creation is oriented toward God. And that seems to be why it all works.
Yes.
So that it doesn't even occur to actors within this psalm that maybe they don't want to go to bed at night. They want to, get bright exterior lights so they can go out during the predator. Like, it just, everyone's oriented to God, and that's the battery pack. That's the hub of this whole system. And when it's not, this idea of God hiding God's face comes up a lot in the Psalms in particular. And it is one of the biggest fears that the psalmists seem to have, this sense of being like losing your connection and being out of relationship somehow. just today I was studying another psalm with a group, and someone in the group who's a psychiatrist was saying they've done studies, they sound so disturbing, of having an infant held by its mother or its father, and the parent is told not to look away, but not to change their facial expression at all, just to like hold a stone face at their baby. And the babies become distressed within like 60 seconds, like to not be able to see an expressive face.
That is fascinating.
Looking at them.
Yeah.
I just like Hester Panim, the hiding of the face for me is just such an evocative, like, what does it mean to be cut off from God's face? And it is terrifying.
I have such a more simple-minded response to that, and I think yours is more beautiful. Mine is simply that we have been talking in Psalm 104 as though life just thrives always. But we live in a world in which we know that that's not true. And even in very simple terms, like leaves fall off the trees in the winter and creatures die. And so this is this psalm's way of saying, yeah, like death is a thing. And death is about God. Like God provides for a time and then God withdraws. And I don't know, like, yeah, that's terrifying. I don't know that God is trying to terrify in that sense. You know, I love Ecclesiastes, and so this sounds very like Ecclesiastes to me, right? There's a time for living and a time for dying. And this is just trying to tell us that death is part of life. And it doesn't necessarily mean, in my reading, it doesn't necessarily mean anything bad or like a disconnect or we've stopped paying attention or God doesn't care anymore. But simply like things have a time. And when that time is over, God steps back. And then in the next verse, God says, but that's not the end of life. That's just the end of your life, which maybe I don't, it's still terrifying. But like there is a renewal. There is more. Like life yet still goes on, even though your individual life ceases.
Yeah.
So that's the way I have been reading it.
I mean, I think but for the phrase, hide your face.
Yeah.
That to me is a frightening phrase and says something about the relationship or lack of perceived relationship. But I almost like want to put that aside for a minute because I think what you're saying is so beautiful and important that it is part of the natural world that things die and that through the death of things, new life is nurtured. Like that's how forests work. Like that's how gardens are. We might only see the blooming flowers, but things also die. And that's okay. That's how the system's made. Yeah. So if there are ways that we can hold both of those things, like the grandeur and beauty and, fecundity of creation, and also that things will die as part of the system, I think that's worth trying to do.
I think so too. And I'm not yet willing to give up that phrase, God hiding God's face, because once you've established that God is sustaining things, you have to have some language for talking about the fact that things die. And so the only real way to talk about that is God withholding or God hiding. Otherwise, you would just have to be like, well, God's, the heavenly zookeeper's just skipping your habitation now. And like, you know what I mean? Like God stops feeding you. So anyway, and maybe it could, one could also read it as God hides God's face because God does not want to witness what is happening there.
Yeah.
I just think no matter how you talk about it, death is kind of terrifying. Even if you come to even if you come to peace with it, I still find it kind of terrifying.
Yeah.
All right, we have one more little section of this psalm to go, beginning in verse 31. Let the Lord's glory last forever. Let the Lord rejoice in all he has made. God has only to look at the earth, and it shakes. God just touches the mountains, and they erupt in smoke. I will sing to the Lord as long as I live. I will sing praises to my God while I'm still alive. Let my praise be pleasing to him. I'm rejoicing in the Lord. Let sinners be wiped clean from the earth. Let the wicked be no more. But let my whole being bless the Lord. Praise the Lord. So I want to focus on, there's three sort of things that are happening here. The first one is in the very beginning of this. In some way, God is being invited to rejoice. In verse 31. Can you talk about that? God's rejoicing.
I mean, I think that it takes us right back to the beginning, this image of God's delight in creation.
Yeah.
I don't know that I have anything else to say about it, Bobby. Do you have something more to add to that?
I don't know. I mean, maybe no. Just the beauty and profundity of that.
Yes.
Not just that, in Genesis 1, you get the sense that God created things and was like, hey, that's nice. Mm-hmm. Here you get this sort of like God's ongoing
God's
rejoicing
like on a water
things.
slide. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I love that.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to step out of sequence because I want to talk about the first half of verse 35. We had this whole beautiful psalm. The only little tiny bit of negativity we got was about the dying part a minute ago. But then, right before we land the plane, let sinners be wiped clean from the earth and let the wicked be no more, which always, like, it just, it sticks out a little bit. Like, could you not have just, like, let creation be a peaceful, beautiful place where we all get along? Can you help me think about why the psalmist talks about wiping out wicked people there?
Oh, yeah, I kind of skipped over that verse in my
yeah,
reading
I
of
do
it.
too. So my personal reading, I often skip that line too.
I mean, I think the best I can do with it is sort of an acknowledgement that we have set up like a really pretty idyllic portrayal of creation here. And so then this adding in of sinners and wicked folk or wickedness, I feel like is almost like it projects it not quite into the future, like it is in the present, but it gives me the sense that it's a little bit aspirational. Like, look at what it fundamentally is, like what in its essence, this is creation.
Yeah.
And so then these, little elements that kind of muck it all up, I just really wish they were not here.
Yeah. I think that's a good way of reading it. And I think that's sort of where I'm also settling it for myself. We're going to see next week in Leviticus 26 that there really is a biblical sense that the world will work like Psalm 104 if people live their lives in the right way. Mm-hmm. But we don't. And often, or at least not all of us, and therefore, things don't look like Psalm 104. And so I think you can read this a little bit as the world that God has created is such a beautiful world and everything works well together. But people who don't recognize that are messing it up for the rest of us. Mm-hmm. And I probably put myself in the category of people who are messing it up.
Category. Yeah.
And if they would just disappear, then we could get back to living like Psalm 104.
Yeah.
And so it's sort of a wish that I wish we could all just live in this beautiful world that we have described here, more than like I wish bad things for my enemies.
Right. I agree with you.
So the psalm ends kind of where it begins. I mean, bless the Lord, O my soul, is exactly where it began, with the sense of singing to the Lord, singing praise, being in praise, praising the Lord. So we've connected on this issue of praise beginning to end. Can you just talk to me a little bit about that sense of how does the praising or the singing strike you differently, having read what came before it now? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, I have two thoughts. One is just, it's such a remarkable and joyful rundown of this place where we live. We live in this place. We are in this world. It feels much less sort of abstract, okay, now we should praise the Lord. Like once you have
Yeah.
sort of like gone through everything and sort of realized the grandeur of this whole system that is all around you, it feels really alive to me. And then ending with hallelujah.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like the hallelujah is the praise, and it's so short,
Yeah.
but it's so rich at that point because
Oh, I love that.
you've like filled it, you've infused it with all of
Yeah.
this stuff. But it doesn't have to be some complicated, elaborate praise. It's just like a real heartfelt hallelujah.
I love that, Amy. The singing reminds me of the singing that the birds were doing in the trees back in the middle of the psalm.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't speak bird, so I don't know what they're saying, but I'm guessing they're not saying anything overly complicated.
Yeah.
And so if my soul could also sing like a bird sings, sort of spontaneously, and because the world is so beautiful,
Yeah.
and something as simple as hallelujah,
Yeah.
like that's just a lovely idea.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so we have spent some time now with Psalm 104. We've been gesturing a little bit towards our own time and space, but as you're reading this psalm, thinking about our communities, what are you taking away as the focus point this week?
I think that I have talked about this before on this podcast, although hopefully not too recently, so I don't sound like a broken record. But this psalm really just reminds me, especially as we're talking about creation care, how critical it is to sort of tend to our own proverbial fire by just enjoying creation.
Yeah.
Like we get to live in God's playground. Like that's pretty amazing.
That
and
is,
like
yeah.
I don't know, I am not a scientist, but I have read many essays by scientists who talk about their work not as doing things that they feel like they should do, or not even necessarily in terms of like the practicality, but in terms of being so like gobsmacked by the intricate beauty of whatever area of science they are working in, and that it's just captivating to them. And that's the fire in their belly, and they come out with all kinds of very practical and helpful things, but it doesn't come from a place of like worry or even like obligation or even responsibility. Like it comes from a real love of the beauty of it. That's what I draw from this psalm, is that it's a good way for me to fire up my own belly about this world we get to live in, which then hopefully does, affect what we do and what we don't do in the world. But it's pretty amazing.
I love that. And I love that little, the sort of right at the center of this psalm in verse 15 about the gladness of human hearts and the shininess of our faces and the fullness of our bellies. And that sort of like, this psalm is pointing us toward exactly that sort of human well-being. And so to be contented and to see the beauty and to sing the songs, I really love that emphasis. That same little verse 15, which is sort of the most human kind of thriving piece here, is then surrounded by those other verses that we were talking about, in which the wild donkeys and the tree birds and the cows and the storks and the badgers or whatever they are. I want them to be badgers just because
they're badgers.
We need some little mean creatures in there too. Like they are also thriving. And sometimes I think we get a sense of like human thriving has to come at the expense of other creaturely thrivings, or that somehow we're like, I don't know, combat's not exactly what I mean, but like we're struggling for resources.
Yeah.
Here the whole thing is set up so human thriving is like enfolded in this larger thriving of God's creation. And then the night and day give us day shift and night shift, so that we can be safe while we're out at work in the day, but also so that we can leave creatures alone while they're out feeding their kids at night.
Yeah.
And so there's a sense in which the creation works for all of us if we let it work for all of us. And so kind of what you're saying about, human thriving and the majesty of creation, which I think is so lovely, then also extends to, like, the birds are in the trees singing that same song.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know what badgers do. Do you know how badgers express joy? They
harass you.
They're like less mean. Anyway, the badgers are doing badgery, joyful things. And, God is like godding around on a wind scooter wearing a light robe. Like the whole thing is just like joyful.
It's pure joy all the way around, and there's room for all of it.
Yeah, I love that. Also, God might hide God's face and you might die. But we don't need to we don't have to talk about that part at any given moment. I think that's where I want to leave it. Usually I have some sort of moral scolding that I feel like doing, but today I don't really want to.
I think where we can take opportunities to just find joy in creation, it's worth doing. We'll scold you again next week, don't worry.
Amen. We will definitely be scolding a little bit next week. Like half of the text is scoldy. We're in Leviticus 26. We're going to kind of do a little smattering of verses from the beginning and end of that chapter. I don't know if we want to say any more about it. Let's just let Psalm 104 rest in our hearts and souls.
Rest in the glory of Psalm 104.
Yeah, thanks for this conversation, Amy. I'll see you for a little Leviticus next time.
I'll be ready.
All right.
Bye.
Thanks for joining us for this week's episode of BibleWorm. If you've enjoyed this free podcast, we hope you'll help us keep it going by joining our Patreon for as little as $4 per month. You can also sign up for other goodies like early access, video lectures, weekly liturgies, and more. Visit patreon.com/BibleWorm podcast for details.
BibleWorm is produced and edited by Bobby Williamson. Our theme song is sung by Colin Bagby, and our theme music is The World at Large by Dano Songs. Many thanks to all of our Patreon supporters for helping make this podcast possible.
We hope you'll join us next time as we continue on with our series on creation care with a look at Leviticus 26. Until then, keep on digging.